Welcome to the Block and Tackle Show, hosted by Carl Block. Carl is a partner in the law firm of Loeb & Loeb here in Los Angeles, California. He will be tackling some of the biggest issues in business today. Listen, learn, and enjoy as he leaves no stone unturned during deep conversations with some of today's most amazing business leaders. Welcome to the show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Block and Tackle Show. I'm your host, Carl Block. Today, I have an amazing guest, Paul Escala, who is an entrepreneurial and very learned educator. Paul's background is that he graduated from Cornell University and he grew up going to school in the parochial school system in Los Angeles. And ironically, one of his first jobs in education, but not the first one, which we'll talk about, he became president and CEO of St. John Bosco School, which was a school he went to for high school. He owns his own educational consulting firm and is currently the superintendent of the Los Angeles Archdiocese School System, which has over 250 schools in 3 counties and an approximate student population of 70,000, and I believe is the largest Catholic school system in the United States. Paul is an innovator, he is thoughtful, and he has helped promote and been involved in educational opportunities for disadvantaged communities, both in the private and public schools. Paul, welcome.
Thank you, Carl.
So it's really good to have you today. And, we have talked obviously about education, and we've known each other for a few years, and it's just wonderful to have you on. Why don't you tell us a little bit about being superintendent of the largest Catholic school system in the country?
Yeah, I come to this work, as you mentioned, really being called to it. It found me. Being the superintendent of the largest non-public school system in the United States and the 4th largest in the state of California. It's a daunting task, but the reward far exceeds the scope and scale of it. As you mentioned, we serve nearly 70,000 preschool through 12th graders across 3 counties, Santa Barbara, Ventura, and Los Angeles. We're in virtually every neighborhood in all 3 counties, and by physical space are in a position to serve a highly diversified community, a community that mirrors this great region of ours.
What I want to talk a little bit about before we get back to the Archdiocese schools and education in general, let's talk a little bit more about your background. And I say that because I think most people understand that there's a high percentage of people from disadvantaged backgrounds in the Archdiocese school system. And I think your own personal background is a background of overcoming challenges and not necessarily having all of the economic support that some people are lucky to have. So tell us a little bit about you growing up and what motivated you and inspired you to get where you are.
The first thing that comes to mind is grit and perseverance. I was not born into what you would call privilege or wealth in the material and sort of monetary wealth environment. I was born into the wealth of love and family. It was an incredible differentiation that I had with grandparents, my mother, who raised me on her own, who made extraordinary sacrifices and gave me all the tools and skills necessary to be the person I am, the husband I am, and the father that I am, and be able to give back to schools and a community that gave me the opportunity to end the cycle of poverty and really be what we would all would define and what we would all hope for still exists as the American dream. And that grit and perseverance has been, I think, the differentiating factor in my ability to rise above those challenges of the neighborhoods I grew up in. That a lot of kids around me, a lot of my peers, didn't have that love at home, didn't have that encouragement, those expectations that were very, very high. My mom was the youngest of 4 siblings, and I was her only child. And so I was the youngest grandson. So a lot of expectations on me. Most of my family growing up in the harbor area of Los Angeles, worked on the docks, worked in refineries, good paying blue collar jobs. My mom was a civil servant in the county of Los Angeles for nearly 40 years. So I was exposed to a lot of challenges of kids my age, a lot of families, new arrival families to this country who wanted the same thing my mom wanted, my grandparents wanted. And though my dad wasn't in my life, that was never an excuse. I was fortunate and blessed to have a great deal of uncles and cousins in my life who filled in those voids and filled in those gaps that I needed in order to realize my potential. And my education became the greatest force multiplier in my life. It's the catalyst that opened doors that I didn't think was possible, that a lot of other people in my own family didn't think that was possible for me, like going on to an Ivy League institution that you got to work your tail off for. And despite the fact that you're coming from not a whole lot, and you're also a person of color, one could assume that you had some advantage in the admissions game. And I can tell you right now, I'm living proof that I had to earn every part of it. I worked twice as hard, in order to be up into that competitive edge that I needed to, because I did not want to become a statistic. I did not. And I was reminded of that all the time. It's not going to happen. So what do we need to do to get you in that position? But by the numbers, I should not be on this podcast with you. By the numbers, people like me aren't where I'm at. And I hope that can lead as an example to others, especially young people, that no matter who you are, truly, you can overcome. You can look for those assets in your life and those people in your life that can make a difference. And they're not too far away. You just have to ask. You got to have enough humility to ask for help.
Okay. And that, by the way, that was wonderful what you said. So let's just unpack a little bit of this. Probably the people in the area that you grew up who weren't lucky enough to go into the Catholic school system probably weren't getting college prep courses and as you said, ended up becoming statistics. And they also didn't have family love that you had. And whether your work ethic was part innate and part because your grandparents or your mother really, really instilled these values to you, you were able to succeed. And yet, as you have done that, you are able to have empathy and compassion for people who aren't lucky enough to have had a strong family values and going to the parochial school system. And so before we get back to the diocese for a second, let's talk about your first job with charter schools and what you did so that people can have a full appreciation of you actually working in trying to improve public school systems. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough to be exposed to virtually every facet of the PK through 12 system, if you will, particularly in California, Los Angeles, which is my home, but also reflecting on that vast diversity and that tapestry of systems across the country, public school systems through districts, public schools in the charter realm. and doing that, coming up into this system that found me through a teacher who was elected to the school board here at LA Unified School District. He put me on a journey that I never even knew was possible from a career standpoint. And working in the public district system to the charter school system, I always really look back on my own experience as a student and begin to really understand how special, how different that experience was. And then to see that juxtaposition in large utility type systems from a district standpoint, like LA Unified, to serving in an advocacy position with the California Charter Schools Association across the state, advocating for physical space for charter schools, to then becoming a CEO of a growing charter school network in Central California, the breadbasket of California and the nation and the world, and working in small rural farming communities, building charter schools and creating a door that wasn't even there for children and families to realize that they can realize the potential of their child, maximize the potential of their child in a different type of school, a school where we were free from the bureaucratic sort of trappings of a system like a district, where decisions became more local, more focused in on innovative learning, like edible education, kids learning how to grow food, to understand the science behind it, the nutritional value of it. I mean, one of the communities that I served in, Carl, had among the highest levels of type 2 diabetes among children. I just paradoxically, these are communities that were growing some of the most nutritious vegetables in the world, yet the children were eating food that was completely the opposite, fast food, having just really cheap food to have access to, not eating the very food that their parents were out in fields every single day, toiling in the land and picking. And my grandparents, particularly my grandfather, who came to this country as a migrant farm worker, this was a really interesting parallel in my life, and gave me more and more affirmation to the work that I do. And being the grandson of a migrant farm worker, and then working in those communities and those children, and giving them the opportunity to realize a different life, a different chance, was an incredibly rewarding experience, and I thank God for it.
I appreciate that. Later on this year, I'm actually going to probably have Michael Flood from the Los Angeles Regional Food Bank on to talk about nutrition and the nutritional deficits and how it affects kids' ability to go to school, participate in school. And so that's going to be a great topic, and I'm glad you mentioned that. Why don't we talk a little bit about the school? Let's first talk about within the diocese, the demographics of the school system. You have a lot of Title I students, lower income students, right? What approximate percentage would you say that is?
About a third of our student body out of the 70,000 qualify for Title I and free and reduced lunch. Okay. We serve nearly 7,000 children every day with a free breakfast and a free lunch. And this is one of those moments where I think it's really important for your viewers to understand. Non-public school children are eligible for federal and state programs, title programs, free and reduced lunch, E-rate, to ensure that they have access to digital communications and internet service and devices. We have been on the leading edge of advocating and defending that right, that every child who is eligible under the federal standard receive those services. And I will tell you that many school districts find ways to reduce that eligibility and find ways to ensure that our kiddos are not getting access to that. And we, in fact, just prevailed in a very, very important administrative matter with the United States Department of Education, where they, after years of investigation, had found in the Archdiocese's favor that the Los Angeles Unified School District had intentionally blocked and found ways to make our students ineligible for Title I services. And now we are hard at work to ensure that we keep the district honest and ensure that those services get to our kids. But we serve 78% of our student body are children of color, and 60% live in what we define as urban Los Angeles. So that's the urban core, highest density parts of Los Angeles County. So we mirror back not only the diversity of Los Angeles and this great land, but we also mirror back our mission orientation from the first Catholic school in the United States, established in the 1600s in New Orleans, to the first school established in Los Angeles in 1851 by the Sacred Heart religious order. All were designed and built to ensure one that children who were of faith, of the Catholic faith, received an equitable education and were not discriminated against. Catholics have had a history in this country of being discriminated against. It was a response to discrimination that they found in public schools. Secondly, was to serve the poor, the at-risk, the immigrant, and of course, fast forwarding to today, we have such an incredibly diverse school system, and we are serving children from every walk of life, including those who are not Catholic. In fact, about 30% of our student body are non-Catholic. Jews, Muslims, Protestants, atheists, because I think that these messages are universal and they come to values this nation was built on, and they are universal. So I see this tapestry of diversity as this incredible strength, even though we also have tensions and we have oftentimes discourse. And that is the society that we live in. And that's why we are in the education business, to help reconcile those matters, to teach reason, logic, understanding, and problem solving, particularly when it comes to human-to-human interaction.
So that's wonderful. And I think I want to unpack that too. But I first want to ask you whether the challenges today in educating kids in the Archdiocese or the parochial school system, are they similar to the challenges that public schools face? Or are there, defined differences? And ultimately, where I want to go with you here is, what are the challenges in schools across America today? Not just parochial schools, not just public schools, but all schools.
All schools. And I want to say this, and I might be provocative in this, but I say this to all of our principals and my team and everybody who listen. We need all schools to win for kids, every single school. Catholic schools are not going to replace public schools. That's not our mission. We are distinctively different. Our approach to education is really formation of the human soul. We do have a very, very strong faith orientation, but we can unpack those values into universals that I think apply to a society that we all want to live in. We want to love one another. We need to understand one another. Our challenges have, I think, aspects of differentiation. We can differentiate some challenges clearly on the financial front in a state like California, where we don't have the advantage of educational savings accounts, tax credits, vouchers. We do experience a challenge on the financial front in creating access. We also, though, create a great deal of resourcefulness grit, perseverance. I continue with that again because I will tell you the most resourceful person I have ever met in my career is a Catholic school teacher and a Catholic school principal. They have to wear multiple hats. They've got to run a business. They've got to teach. They've got to care. They've got to put a Band-Aid on. They've got to return a phone call to a parent. They've got to make sure that the floors are clean, that they are marketing their school. The list goes on and on and on. In the public school system, it's different. Yet they are experiencing very similar challenges when it comes to, in this particular state, declining enrollment. It's a real thing. We are seeing population challenges, particularly among K through 12 students. Everyone's feeling that. We're also feeling what I think on the surface might appear to be the social and emotional challenges in the classroom, and a new generation of parents that are approaching their engagement with teachers and principals very differently. But beneath that surface and those challenges that we see with behavior, emotion, disaffiliation with social norms, because so many of our students have been born into a digital environment, speak in 168 characters, use emojis and not words. I mean, all of these things that have been happening, but I think it's important for us, particularly in the education sector, but also in business and as citizens, to understand what is motivating and driving that. And what it truly is that what education as a sector is starting to experience is a consumerism and a commodity-driven mentality and culture that is now feeding into what has been fairly protected territory. I grew up as you respect the teacher's always right. If you had to go to a principal, boy, you better get ready, because you're about to get, you're going to have to answer to the big, the big shot. In today's environment, where you have a culture of immediate gratification, a on-demand culture that I want an answer now, somebody needs to resolve my grievance because my opinion counts, because I have a social media channel and I've got an account and I get likes and I get dislikes and somebody's responding to me. There's a psychological thing that has happened in the last 20 years with the rapid acceleration of technology, communication, and information, Carl. We cannot underestimate how that has impacted what has been one of the third rails in American society, that has flipped the conversation, has flipped the relationship, and we saw it come into full view during the pandemic.
And understood. And what I would say to you is quickly that in the public school system, they basically have to take everybody who comes here must be in the system. You talk about 168 characters in their tweets or what have you, or their X's, whatever we're calling it these days.
Right.
You have 160 languages spoken in the Los Angeles Unified School District. You have teachers who have very large classrooms. They don't get to select the students within the classroom. You may have huge differences in the learning abilities of particular kids, in the family backgrounds of different kids, of children with disabilities, of motivation of kids, how much screen time, phone time they get within a family, whether they are themselves social and they have family time and dinner with the family every night, or whether they're just on the screen. So I think that it's good that you say this is a society issue. It's not just for the diocese, it's for all school systems. And those are issues from a policy level. I'm sure you know that it is more than just the government that would have to help with making our society aligned with community values and family values and the ideas of respect and collaboration and responsibility. Those are things, there's no government program that can fix those. And even within a school, you only have your kids for so many hours of a day. What do they go home to? And so I think that those are things unquestionably that are going to be challenges for school systems. And maybe COVID was really the match to the gasoline, and it accelerated all this. But again, the more technology we have, the more kids have access to technology, the less focus there is on what I'll call a classic education, and again, community and integration and getting along in collaboration. Yes, I can see how incredibly tough that is. And I completely get where you're coming from. And, I would just ask today, because we've got a lot more things to talk about.
Yeah.
Do you think that is the biggest issue in education across all schools? And I'm just curious to know, if you feel yes or no that is. And obviously, in a minute or two, we're going to talk about others. But do you think that is the biggest issue?
Yeah, I don't think it's the biggest issue. I think it's a byproduct of what we have come to expect in as consumers, that these institutions need to be more responsive to what otherwise was dealt with at home, and you named it. And I think parents are the biggest critical component to all of this that no government can resolve. But I think that this is where, in our world, and you mentioned all the challenges that public school systems have, at scale in our environment, while we can, when we admit students, and we can certainly not admit students, and we can certainly ask students to move on, I think it would be surprising to your viewers how many children we don't say no to. That part of our work in our Catholic schools, and I can't speak for others, the idea of selectivity and exclusivity is virtually absent. We have leaned into spaces like a differentiated instruction for special needs students. We've leaned in to students who have come to us hungry, for example. We've leaned into these spaces where children are experiencing questions about their own human sexuality. And I think that when you begin to understand that we are a ministry, Catholic schools are a ministry, that we're not a public utility system, that we serve a public good, but we do that through the lens of faith, that we have to live our faith, which means we are not going to turn the other cheek. We're not going to turn kids away. So because of that, and also because our resources are limited, I mean, Carl, when you think about our cost per child versus what the cost per child in a public system, the costs are the same, but the revenues are completely different. We might generate $4,000, $5,000 a kid through tuition and fundraising, whereas public schools will get $21,000 when you include federal dollars. So we have similar expenses, but our revenues are not there to keep up. So we do have some limitations, but we accept and we educate all children. And I think because of that, we are in that space where we are seeing this sort of byproduct of a world where values and norms have changed dramatically, and parents and families by extension and students expect more from institutions, and then are disappointed when institutions fail because they can't meet that demand. But the big question I always have for folks, and I can do this because we are in the non-public school system and faith is driving us, is family, parents, where are they in this? Are they enveloped in the values? Are they with their kids, accompanying their kids in their educational journey? Or are they just dropping them off and expecting that the school is going to be able to take care of the rest? We have to fix.
Understood. Thanks for tuning in. If you want more info on the show, please visit blockandtackleshow.com. And you can also email me at carl@blockandtackleshow.com. Thanks for tuning in.